please silence your phones now. The ceremony is about to begin. Students and staff, please silence your phones now. Good morning and welcome to Lake Central High School and our third annual Veterans Day Convocation. My name is Alexis Nikolovsky and I will be serving as one of today's Masters of Ceremonies. Veterans Day was once known as Armistice Day on the very first anniversary of World War I, November 11th, 1919. In 1926, Congress passed a resolution calling for an annual observance of Armistice Day. And in 1938, Armistice Day became a national holiday. In 1954, President Eisenhower officially changed the name of the holiday from Armistice Day to Veterans Day to honor all veterans from all conflicts. In 1968, the uniform holiday was passed by Congress, which moved the celebration of Veterans Day to the fourth Monday in October. The law went into effect in 1971, but in 1975, President Ford returned Veterans Day to November 11th due to the historical significance of the date. Veterans Day pays tributes to all American veterans, living or dead, thanking them for answering their country's call honorably during war or peacetime. Lake Central High School has elected to hold our third annual Veterans Day Convocation today, November 9th, in order to accommodate the 9 other schools in the Lake Central School Corporation. By doing this, all of our corporation schools were able to host a veterans ceremony. Today's event hosts over 175 veterans. So please stand and welcome our veterans as they're led into the program by the ORX Shriner Bagpipes. And please remain standing for the posting of the colors.
La- Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and direct your attention to the northeast corner of the gym, to the color guard for the posting of the colors, and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem by Lake Central's wind ensemble under the direction of Dave Nelson. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us today are our special guest, Governor Joseph Kernan, Master Sergeant Alan Thomas, families of our Gold Star families, Staff Sergeant David Novacek, his father, Andrew, his mother, Patty, Rachel, his wife, Hillary, his daughter, Connor, his stepson, Specialist Sergio Perez, Veronica Orso, his mother, Jose Mirando, his stepfather, Candace, his sister, Andrea, his sister, Karime, his sister, Mr. Marty Ziglitz, Indiana State Commander of the American Legion, and Mrs. Rose Ziglitz. Please join me in welcoming our guests. Providing remarks and introducing today's first Keystone speaker, Master Sergeant Alan Thomas, please welcome Mr. Bagley, Principal of Lake Central High School.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, faculty and staff, students and friends of Lake Central High School, and welcome to our third annual Veterans Day Convocation. I'd like to start by paying special recognition to some very important members of our audience. First I'd like to welcome our Gold Star families, the families of Staff Sergeant David Nowacek and Specialist Sergio Perez, both of whom we lost in Afghanistan. As I can never ease the burden of the pain of the loss of your sons, I hope that you always see that Lake Central High School will always remember the service and sacrifice of your sons and the sacrifice of your families. So I want to just thank you for being here today. It is our hope, next I'd like to thank our keynote speakers, Governor Kernan and Master Sergeant Thomas, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here today. So thank you on behalf of the students and staff of the student body. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't thank some of the people that helped put this together. The History Club, Mr. Clark, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, and all the students in our wind ensemble and our choirs. I mean, our band was just down in Indy. They placed 6th in state, did a great job there. They've been practicing countless hours. And for you guys to come here and do this, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Putting my comments together last night, I was going through the sign-up sheet, and we had 128 veterans that signed up for attendance. I know we have more, and we've had them from several different conflicts. I counted 2 from World War II. That was over 73 years ago. I think I got a couple more in the audience. We had 6 that served during the Korean War over 60 years ago. We have over 50 of our veterans that served during the Vietnam War. 10 served during the first Gulf War, and we've had many that are served post 9/11. So today's convocation honors everyone's service. So to you, our veterans, and the families of our veterans, and to our Gold Star families, thank you on behalf of all the students and staff of Lake Central High School. Now, there's 2 parts to this. We thank our veterans, which is very important, but it's also a lesson for you, the students here in attendance. As Machiavelli wrote, never was anything great achieved without danger. The veterans that sit before you today face that danger for a substantial amount of time and on a daily basis for the purpose greater than themselves. They face danger without question or complaint in order to preserve the liberty and freedoms that we enjoy and to protect the interests of this country. So it's so important that we realize that those that took up the profession of arms were not from some distant land. They are our neighbors, our friends, and our relatives that make up our Tri-Town community. They are the men and women of this state and of this country. So as you, our student body, as you, our youth, and our future, take up the mantle of leadership, because in this audience, there may sit a future senator, perhaps a future governor, and dare I say, a future president. When your generation leads our nation, I ask you hark back to today's event and remember we owe our military the best training, the best equipment, the best leadership before we send them into harm's way. And that we as a country take care of our veterans and their families upon their return. And finally, and most importantly, we use all forms of national power before choosing the military option. And we understand what the great Prussian strategist Karl von Clausewitz wrote over 185 years ago. Military victories are meaningless unless they are the means to a political end, which are those objects leading directly to peace. So now it is my great privilege to introduce our first guest speaker. I've had the honor of serving alongside Master Sergeant Thomas, I think, for 15 years. In that time, I think he started, was a specialist when I first met him, and now he's quickly, I say again, quickly risen through the ranks to a senior non-commissioned officer, and he's currently the senior battalion operations NCO for the 113th Engineer Battalion. He has been deployed 3 times to both Iraq and Afghanistan. His awards include the Meritorious Service Medal and the Army Commendation Medal. In 2017, he was very deservingly named the Indiana American Legion Military Person of the Year. He grew up in Northwest Indiana, graduating from Wirt High School in 2000, and currently lives in Maryville with his wife and 2 daughters. Would you please join me in welcoming Master Sergeant Alan Thomas.
Good morning, Lake Central. How are you doing? Good. Lake Central High School, I'd like to thank you for joining me today as we honor the brave men and women from all walks of life who have stepped forward to defend our nation throughout its history. Veterans Day is a celebration of all those who have served and continue to serve our nation with honor and distinction. I really appreciate the warm welcome, but I must contend that my accomplishments pale in comparison to the accomplishments of all the veterans sitting before us today. Can we please give them another round of applause? I appreciate all the veterans in attendance and everything that you've done. Each year we set aside this day across the country to celebrate and pay tribute to our Americans, veterans, and their devotion to patriotism, selfless service, and their sacrifice on behalf of all of us. It's their loyalty to country and their great courage that have made us what we are today. What we've been more than 2 centuries is a nation that is a beacon of hope in this complex world. I want to say thank you not only to them, but their families for the sacrifices that they've made for our nation. So once again, let's give a round of applause to all this, not just the veterans, but the veterans' families. Thank you. For nearly a century, we've celebrated this day, the anniversary of Armistice Day that ended World War I. On the 11th hour of the 11th day in the 11th month, the battlefields of Europe fell silent after more than 4 years of fierce fighting. Regardless of the military branch that our veterans have served in, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard, this day belongs to them and all the vast generations of patriots before us and in the future. From the Minutemen who served in our independence to the gallant veterans who are now fighting the global war and terrorism, they are what make our nation great. Each patriot is part of a proud legacy, and that we've served with honor and integrity and dignity. We've served in many different places in many different ways, but we have all served. They have fought in different wars. They've preserved the peace, and whether they're in faraway lands or here at home. They've all lived under an uncommon banner, which is love your country and the service for the nation, and therefore it's fitting that we pause as a nation to recognize them for their selfless service and their sacrifices. President Calvin Coolidge long ago once said, "A nation which forgets its defenders will itself be forgotten." Well, America doesn't have to suffer from that problem because your presence here today so that we are showing our veterans the love and appreciation that they deserve. And I'd like to give yourselves a round of applause. As a nation, we are blessed with the freedoms that our veterans have secured and preserved. They fought to defend our country and our way of life, not only for us, but for future generations of Americans. The U.S. has been part of a war for more than 16 years now, and that war has now generated the largest population of veterans that we've seen in our nation since the Vietnam War. Every year, our veteran population grows by over 125,000 veterans. It is very important, and we owe it to these men and women to make sure that as they transition out of the military service, that they are getting the skills they need for proper employment. Potential for future soldiers to observe has taken care of, is being shown how we take care of our veterans today. If we want to maintain our all-volunteer armory, it's extremely important that we maintain the respect that we do for our veterans. As a soldier, I have served in combat in many different military campaigns, and there are many different wars and battles going on. And as I talked to Lake Central High School today, I want to say that we all are fighting one war today, and that's a war of the mind. Every day that we fight in this world, this real world, it's a real estate between negative and positive. There's only one way to think positively, and that's create positive thinking. One has to think positive to be positive because this world is increasingly negative. Well, let me say it a different way. Negativity is not real. It's only the absence of positivity. Much like darkness can't consume light in a room, but a candle in that room can make darkness disappear. Negativity disappears with positive thinking. On a deployment that I had with Mr. Bagley, there was another gentleman by the name of Brunsman. He was a young man, young 20s, studying to be a pilot. And we were sitting down one day in 2005. I think we had just completed a mission. and he was telling me about the pilot examination that they need to take, and he was telling me about the principles of flight. It was at that moment in 2005 that I took those principles that the young Brunsman kind of explained to me and put that in my own life. You see, when a plane takes off, there are 4 things that it has to factor in: lift, thrust, drag, and weight. So as I think about it, we have to decide what type of people that we're going to be every day. Are we going to be lifters and thrusters and motivate the men and women around us, or are we going to be drags and weights? As you close your eyes and thinking about the people that you have in your life, how many are lifters and thrusters, and how many drags and weight do you have in your life? If we all look in the mirror and just think about internally how we can change ourselves, we can all be lifters and thrusters, and our nation will be better for it. The key to thinking positive is having goals. People with goals succeed because they know where they're going. Whatever we plant in our subconscious mind and nourish with repetition and emotion will one day become a reality. All you need is a plan and a roadmap and the courage to press to your destination. This is how you become successful. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or idea. And whatever the mind can achieve and believe, it can achieve. Notice I didn't say will achieve. It takes motivation, goal, and action. Remember, a goal is nothing more than a dream with a deadline. Patience, persistence, and perspiration make for an unbeatable combination of success. Every adversity, every failure, and every heartache carries with it the seed of an equivalent benefit. Or let me say it a different way. If we're going to make mistakes and not learn from them, what's the point in making them? As a son, a father, a husband, a soldier, I consider myself successful. As you young men and women prepare for high school, I'd like to bestow upon you a gift that I recently found out really concentrating and thinking about my life and how it's been. The key to success that I believe in life is to have a success equation. P plus T times A plus F. Combine your passion with something that makes your heart sing, with your talent, something that you excel in, multiply it by your association of people or organization you surround yourself with, and actions, concentrated steps towards a goal, and then add faith, the unwavering belief in yourself, and you will have your own success equation. If you merge that with a purpose, an alliance of people that love and appreciate you and have faith, all you need to do is go the extra mile and achieve those goals. In closing, live your family values. You all have and come from a heritage and a proud background. Live the Army values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Be positive. Have goals, find your success equation, and go the extra mile. And live by the golden rule: do unto others as you want them to do unto you. Lastly, as our soldiers represent the best of our nation has to offer, and they are the heart and soul and spirit of the greatest nation on the planet, they all carry the proud legacy and traditions of our soldiers and veterans that have fought and kept our country free. I'm Master Sergeant Thomas, and I thank you for inviting me today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, veterans. My name's Tom Clark. I'm a teacher here at Lake Central, and I've been here 35 years. And I must tell you, and you're going to experience this, and many of you have already experienced this, the person I'm going to introduce changed my life. He changed not only my life, but the life of many students. His name is Joe Kernan, former governor of the state of Indiana, former POW, shot down over North Vietnam, captured, and spent almost a year in the Hanoi Hilton. And he's here to speak to you today about you and the veterans. The veterans have done so much. You know, they've given so much. All of us stood for the veterans. We stand for veterans. And that's what we're here for today. And Joe Kernan will speak to you about his experiences, and he has got a message for all of you young people and the veterans. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I go back, and this was, I don't know, 30 years ago. And Governor Evan Bayh asked me if I would be in charge of building 2 memorials on the plain in the down in Indianapolis, and I said sure, and so now I'm trying to find out who I'm going to get to help me out, and the phone rang one day, and he answered. Tom. He's hard to shake, you know, and just one of the best people that I've ever met. And so we began the process, and I can remember on a number of days when I was in my office that I would go out and I would come back, and there were all these kids in my office. There were 30 of them that were in the office, and there's papers strewn all over the floor. And I was wondering what was going on. And what was going on was that those young men and women from this place here were there to make sure that the names of all of those that had fallen would not be misspelled. So we ended up with the memorials, and you can see them down on the quad. And one was Korea, and the other one was Vietnam. And Vietnam is where I cut my teeth. And I had made the decision. My grandfather and my dad had both been in, had both served, and I was destined to serve. And I, to this day, treasure every bit of the time that I had when I was in service. And so I look back on what has happened, it had happened to me, and Tom was right. I was on a mission of flying, and I was flying in the back seat of a airplane called the Vigilante, and it was fastest airplane in the world at low level at that time. And we were out taking pictures. We were a reconnaissance aircraft. And so we would take the pictures of any targets we might see, and then we'd bring them back to the ship, and then they would determine whether we needed to go back again or not. And we never got that far. We got hit in the tail. All of my charts and everything flew up in the cockpit. Our hydraulic system failed, and my pilot was my XO. He was my executive officer, senior officer, and he ended up punching out. And I stayed in the airplane just for a little bit, and I ended up ejecting as well. And I landed in a little village in Vietnam, and landed on a big concrete slab in the middle of this village. And they welcomed me. Not very well, but I was getting pounded pretty badly. Did not appreciate what was happening to me, and I finally they let me up. They tied me up behind my back, and so then they put me in a boat, and they sent it down the river, and I got in this little boat and went to another village, and they were waiting for me as well. And so I ended up, they put me in a little hut, and again, they were kicking and punching and hitting me. And then they threw me down the stairs into a basement that was dirt, and then threw me in a cell. And so I was pissed off, and so I'm worried about my pilot. I'm worried about Ron and whether he's safe or he got out of the airplane or whatever it was, and so. I'm thinking, God, Ron, I just hope he's all right, and he's maybe back on the ship and all of that. About a couple hours later, I hear some commotion back at the back where I had come in, and I hear, Jesus Christ, where the hell are we now? And it was him. It was Ron. And when he came out of the airplane, he hit the canopy rail and broke his arm, his shoulder, and his back. And the Vietnamese took him, and they put him in a cell with me, and he was terribly banged up and delirious. And so then they decided that they were going to take us up to Hanoi, which they did. And they threw us in a stake bed truck to drive up to Hanoi. And one of the things that they did do was they put 3 inner tubes in the stake truck and lined them up, 3 inner tubes, and laid him on the inner tubes. And I think, and I always hoped that it was because they were trying to make his trip not so horrific. So we got up to Hanoi, and then they sent me off in one direction, and Ron went in the other direction. And that was not unusual, because they did not want us to be able to communicate with each other in any way at any time. And so I ended up staying in the Hilton for what was really just about a week, and then ended up into the prison that I ended up spending most of my time in, and that was the zoo, was the name of it. And the best part of that was that there were other guys in the prison, and the Vietnamese were nowhere near as kicking me and doing whatever they were doing, but we actually ended up, I had a great roommate, Lynn Gunther. He was an Air Force pilot, a FAC, and he had been shot down over in Laos. And in those days, you didn't want to land in Laos. And he ended up coming back, and they brought him back up to Hanoi and threw him in the cell with me. And we made the best of what we had. And there wasn't a lot of moaning and groaning and all of those things. It was mostly spending our time on worrying about our families and thinking about my wife, my family, and just hoping like hell that we were going to get out of there and as quickly as possible. And so the time came when we were outside, and we looked out, and there were a couple of C-41s that were circling over their airport. And the 141s were ours, obviously. And that is one of the best days of my life, when we knew that we were going home. And they had a picture of, oh God, I forget. But anyway, so we ended up getting ready to go, getting ready to get out, getting ready to, and they gave us a gym bag and some clothes and a cup where we had put nails in to make sure we knew who we were, and so off we went. But what happened was the Vietnamese had violated the principle that they captured a guy. He was not military, but he was a Thai, and he was captured. And we didn't know at this time. But so we had to go, we unpacked our bags, we had to go back in, and now we're thinking, God, what's going on? And what was happening was that they wanted this guy, this Thai, and made a swap. And so we ended up then getting out on that day and going out to the airport and climbing in and coming home. And the aftermath is that when you get into a situation like that, the first thing that you can't do is to feel sorry for yourself. And you need to get your dauber up and keep your head, and you will find that it makes an extraordinary difference. And that was one of the lessons that I learned. And so for having had that experience, I think it was an experience actually that I thought I got something out of, because I learned things about me, and now to this day, I don't worry about that anymore. But I just hope, and for all of you, you young people in particular, just remember, you cannot have too many friends. You have to be who you are, and you have to recognize that obviously everybody is not alike, and to treat people in the ways that you would want to be treated. And so with that, I will say thank you very much, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity that I was given, and Alan said, we are in the greatest debt of these veterans that are here today. Those guys are the guys that put themselves in harm's way, that did things that they would never do otherwise, and have made an extraordinary feelings and love for these gentlemen. And I just want to say to them, you guys are the best, and you guys are what we have been calling the greatest generation. So thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Lake Central High School Concert Choir under the direction of Mr. Nathaniel Jones, performing the Armed Forces Melody.
Right
POW MIA ceremony will be conducted by the State Commander of the American Legion, Mr. Marty Zigowitz. This is a place of honor in memory of our fallen, missing, or imprisoned military service members. The table serves as a focal point of ceremonial remembrance, with each item on the table having special symbolism for our service members that are either prisoners of war or missing in action. When all of these items are described, it makes up our POW MIA ceremony. This ceremony has special meaning, for our school has two alums that are still today missing in action. They are Aviation Radio Man, 2nd class Glenn E. Heath Jr., St. John Township High School class of 1943. Glenn served on the aircraft carrier, the USS Bunker Hill. On April 7, 1945, his plane was shot down during the attack of the Japanese battleship Yamamoto. His remains were never recovered. And Staff Sergeant Robert R. Lansing, St. John Township High School, class of 1942. Staff Sergeant Lansing was lost in a bombing mission in Wewak, New Guinea, when his aircraft was attacked by Japanese fighters and disappeared from sight. He was reported missing in action as of March 8, 1944, and presumed dead January 26, 1946. His remains were never recovered. A tribute to these two graduates that are MIA in the display in the North Cafeteria with the MLW or POW MIA flag and its history. Please visit this tribute to understand the sacrifice of our servicemen and women that are prisoners of war and missing in action. And keep all the POWs and MIAs and their families in your thoughts during this ceremony and remain silent for the duration of the tribute. Please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Zigowitz.
Welcome, everybody. How about good morning? Ooh, that sounds a lot better. What's great about today is, especially for me, I got up this morning, so I feel really good. You know, one of the things I'd like to is, you know, over the years, the United States is the best country to live in, so always keep that in mind. But I've been involved with the number of, nobody wants to hear me, okay. I've been involved with the POW movement for over 20 years. And the government itself falters at some times or another, and they're not real truthful about the issue, but we still have to live here and go about our business. In World War II, at the Yalta conference, which was headed up by Roosevelt and all you history buffs out there. Yalta, let's see, Roosevelt and Stalin. Now there was a pact made, the Yalta Pact. The only thing is that the Russians really didn't keep their pact intact. And the Americans wanted to get done with it. We actually abandoned 25,000 soldiers. That's 2 St. John's in Russia. They were all listed as, after a year, as killed in action. So nobody really knows about it. I kind of blame Mr. Truman and at that time, General Eisenhower, too. They just left them there. But moving on, we hit the Korean War. We left over 2,000 abandoned servicemen again over there. After a year, they listed them as KIA. Now, as far as those 25,000 people are, and there's a book out called Abandoned Americans or Abandoned Soldiers, written by Robert Miller. You can get a lot of information on that. My friend Colonel Frank Simons wrote a book, Don't Cry for Heroes. Gives you a really good insight onto the Republic of Vietnam War. And one of the things that I remember is a place called the Golden Triangle. That was in North Vietnam. At that time, during the Vietnam War, the Golden Triangle was the largest producer of opium. CIA had their fingers involved in that, and I think that's why some of our POWs never came home. Now, one of the things now, we have the government agency called the Defense POW-MIA Agency, and they're doing a very good job trying to assimilate the remains of what's left in the Republic of Vietnam. The problem with Vietnam is the soil there is so acidic that everything erodes. There's nothing left. 4 years ago, I announced at one of my district meetings that we had over 200 remains discovered on the atoll of Tarawa. And now they are finally being identified. And it's really important, if you have any relatives, they should get a DNA sample to help out the identification of their loved ones. But with that, I'm here to do the PO. So let's try and be in an attitude of remembrance. Assisting me, administrative assistant, commonly called my wife. She helps me out throughout the state. She helps me out keeping my logistics straightened out while I travel around the state. And also, she's the American Legion Auxiliary State Chaplain. Are you ready, dear? All right. Those who have served and those currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and imprisonment. Let us pause to recognize our prisoners of war and those missing in action. I call your attention to this small table which occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that our members of the armed forces are still missing from our ranks. They are referred to as POWs and MIAs. We call them comrades. They are unable to be with their loved ones and families, so we join together to pay humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absence. The table is small, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against his or her captors. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The single rose in the vase signifies the blood that they may have shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose also reminds us of the family and friends of our missing comrades who keep faith while awaiting their return. The red ribbon on the vase represents the red ribbons worn on the lapels of thousands who demand with unyielding determination a proper accounting for all our prisoners of war and missing in action. A slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate if we do not bring them home. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless fallen tears of families as they wait. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us today, maybe tomorrow, if we remember. The chair is empty. Let us remember their absence. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope, which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors to the open arms of a grateful nation. The American flag reminds us that many of them may never return and have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedom. Let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all our comrades will soon be back within our ranks. Remember and never forget their sacrifice. May God forever watch over them, protect them, and their families. Again, let us remember. The latest statistics I have for the POWs and MIAs is Korea, 4,422, World War II, 7,406, Korea, 7,046, Republic of Vietnam, 1,611, the Cold War, 126, and Iraq and other conflicts, 6. Thank you again for being so attentive, and a happy Veterans Day to all you.
please welcome back Lake Central's concert choir as they perform God Bless America.
We would like to thank the people who made this ceremony possible this year. Thank you, Mr. Bagley, Mr. Clark, Ms. Brum, Ms. Stamper, and all the other school administrators and staff who have helped make this ceremony possible. Thank you to Mr. Volk and Mr. Rainwater for their classes and their artwork, the flags, and all the hard work they have contributed. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis and Mr. Tom Yanovich, for displaying the models of the Tri-Town Veterans Museum and for supporting our endeavors. Thank you to the custodians who have helped set up today and the lunch ladies who prepared the lovely breakfast provided earlier. Thank you, ORAC Shriners, for playing for our program. Thank you, Mr. Nelson, the Lake Central Band, Mr. Jones, the Lake Central Concert Choir for lending their talents. Also, thank you to the members of the History Club and Interact Club who have given countless hours to prepare and set up for the ceremony. Most of all, we would like to thank all veterans here today for the sacrifices made to ensure our safety and freedom. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this completes our ceremony. Please stand for the retiring of the colors. And please feel free to shake the veterans' hands as you're exiting. Thank you.
Again, thank you everyone for your attention today. Thank you for our veterans. All right, we're going to start to dismiss. So we're going to do a couple things. I ask the veterans as our students exit, that please greet them, shake the hands, and students, please, say thank you for the service. We're going to have the band take us out with Stars and Stripes Forever, and we're going to do. And one other thing, we've gone over a little bit of time, so we're going to give you 10 minutes to get back to class, and then we'll chop off some time off of last hour. Again, we've gone a little bit over time. So we'll give you 10 minutes to get back to class. We'll start the bells then. And then we will cut some off of last hour. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll dismiss with the seniors. And the juniors start to exit. Mr. Nelson?